Velkommen til alle sammen. Vi starter lige så stille og roligt. Der mangler et par stykker, men vi lader dem komme ind og sige ud, når de kommer. Men også med respekt for dem, der sidder derhjemme og ser det med som streaming, så vil vi gerne i gang nu her. Jeg er jo utrolig stolt af at præsentere vores panel i dag, og jeg hedder Bettina Simonsen, og jeg er CEO af Lifestyle og Design Cluster, som jeg også arrangerer den her udstilling, som I selvfølgelig skal ud og se bagefter, hvis I ikke allerede har set det. Så har I lige fået et lille reklameindslag. Men jeg har nogle rigtig dejlige paneldeltagere her til, hvor vi skal snakke om Engage your consumer in the circular transition. And now I will switch to English. Today, the panel consists of, first we have Anja Bisgaard, and I see your title is Lifestyle Business Developer and CEO of Spot Trends. And the next one I have here is Christoffer Ravnbøl. And Ravnbøl, you are partner and co-owner of Naboskab. I don't know if you have an English term for that as well.
Neighborhood community.
Neighborhood community, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And the next one on the panel here is Henrik Taudorf Lorentzen, the CEO of Takt. And last but not least is Anja Krog, and she is the Anne Krog. Yes, the country marketing manager and consumer insight manager of IKEA. Good. No titles. Or long titles, yes. Yeah, good. I'm sorry, Anna. And these are our experts today. And today we're going to talk about how do we actually motivate and get the consumer involved in this circular transition. As you can probably talk to many of the brands just here and some of the brands here, a lot of companies are willing and eager and spend a lot of resources in this circular transition. But do we have the customer, the consumer, do we have them along? How do we communicate and how do we motivate them or to see this is the necessary change in a way of using our resources on this earth? So this is the discussion today, and I will actually first, I was trying to ask first our two panel participants to talk a little bit about what their research and their insight is telling us. How is it that the consumer, how are they reacting? What kind of information are they searching for? And next, we have two brands who is every day out there communicating with both business to business and business to consumers. How are they trying to do a good job, and how are they actually succeeding in communicating with the consumer about their circular business models? But Anja, I would like to start with you. I know you are also researching a lot and have thought about how is the brain working on these consumers?
So I run my own company called Spot Trends in Business, where I work with turning trends into business. And in order to do that, you really need to know what makes people take their money out their pockets. And in that link, I am working a lot with understanding the consumers from a neurophysiological point. And that is the brain and the chemistry that goes on in the brain, telling us, yes, we would like that. Yes, I want to buy that. Yes, that is what I want to do. And those preferences are linked into emotions. So emotions is what is driving consumption today. It is through emotions that we buy within the lifestyle industry that we are here today, with either interiors or within fashion, that I also work with. And what some of that research is saying, that this way of getting into this sustainable lifestyle is a little bit up the hill, because we don't have enough critical mass that actually have these top of mind emotional preferences to actually, in the point of purchase, buy sustainable products. If we had that, we would be in a completely different place by now. As I began following this sustainable path already back in 2007, 2008, when we began to talk about whether we had had too much and we needed to do something in a better way. So it's a little bit of a down message, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is not imperative to continue this path for the businesses, because it's really, really important that we do so. And in the future, I completely believe that it's going to be pushed through a legislative direction where it's just imperative and businesses have to do it. But we cannot expect to get it from the consumer's push because we don't have enough critical mass to do so.
So when you talk about critical mass, you mean you don't have enough companies who are very serious on this transition, or?
No, I mean consumers.
Oh, you mean the consumer
amount
demanding?
Of consumers demanding it. Yeah. Definitely, I've been tracking, and I see a lot of companies really pushing and really trying to do so. We're still not there, and we still need to do absolutely more. But if we have to communicate it, which is what we're talking about today, then we need to understand, like, who would it matter to communicate to, and how do we maybe need to communicate it in another way if we have a different kind of emotional preference with the buying consumers that we have. So I work with these different emotional segments of understanding what it is that makes consumers buy what they buy. And for some of them, but not all, for some of them it's really, really important. For others, it's just going right above their heads.
So for your experience, when you look at all the brands now, there's quite a lot of brands going into this green transition. Can you say that there's some of them who's, besides of course these two we have on the panel today, what kind of good examples for those who are communicating well and getting the consumer on their kind of transition road? Do you have any kind of experience you would like to share with us that you've seen someone who have done really well on this?
I don't think I have an exact example, but what I can say is that if they communicated via emotions, then that is how to do it, less than mass technical, functional communication, less certificates and all that stuff. It needs still to be an emotional drive and how to communicate it in that way in order to persuade the consumer into this kind of purchase or consumption.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you a little bit later, but now we move to the next panelist, Christopher. Because I know you guys are really heavy into research, and when you do things, you do it really thorough. And you have also some really good insights you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, and I'm just really excited to be. I think it's a great panel here to be part of. And so, in Naboscape, we work with behavior within circular economy and green transitioning. I'm an anthropologist, and most of our team are anthropologists, sociologists, and behavioral designers. So what we do is try to go quite deep into understanding everyday life, which means we would go out and do sort of deep dive research where we go not live with people, but we try to really live ourselves into their situation. We'll spend time with them in their home. We'll go shopping with them. We will go with them when they throw out their old stuff, and we'll visit them numerous times over long periods of time. These are quite intensive, and also recruiting people to these things can be quite hard because it's quite invasive studies. Yeah, the anthropologist comes out and hang around all the time. But what we find is that I completely agree with everything you said, and I also heard you nodding over there. With we can see there's a intention or motivation action gap. If you ask the consumers, they are all for sustainability, but if you look at what's actually happening, you don't really see the traction there. So one of the things we see is that it's really, when you talk about changes, it's really hard to change people. You have to understand that we are fundamentally against change. We don't like change because it threatens our survival, because we have to use that mental energy for survival. Our old brain thinks that. So it's really hard to change people, and it's really hard to motivate people who are not motivated. So that sounds a little demotivating. But there are other things that you can do. Some of the things that we see work is starting with the ones that actually are motivated and work with them, and then the rest sort of tends to follow, because you can waste so much time, energy, and effort on the ones that are not committed, not motivated. This doesn't only go for products and services, but we work a lot with recycling, reuse, repairing, take-back schemes. So start small, start with the ones who are motivated and willing to do something, and build up from there.
And what is motivating those people who are motivated? What exactly is triggering them to be on this front running?
So the obvious answer is that they're motivated by climate and sustainability and the future of their kids usually. Biodiversity. There's a lot of different agendas that they are motivated by. It can be easier sometimes to look at what people are already doing. It's easy to work with. So find people who are already engaged in reselling stuff, who are already wanting to be engaged in repairing stuff. We have worked a lot with engaging people at recycling stations in what we call circular activities. And we found that this was in Copenhagen. So we turned the process around, and instead of saying, okay, here's all these different activities and workshops we can do, we started out with looking into what are people actually interested in? What did people want to learn? And we found a group of people who are really into the whole do-it-yourself movement, and found that because they're already interested in these things, these were the easiest to sort of persuade or motivate to also get involved in purchasing stuff in a higher quality, repairing, taking care of their stuff, and returning it in a better way.
And what do you think, from your point of view, how many percent of the population are we talking about? I'm just trying to see how can we motivate companies to do this. How is it 10%, 20% that we can actually tailor?
It really depends on the customer segmentation and age and stuff like that. It's maybe 10-20%.
All right, good.
But yeah, I can't say that. But the other thing is that change is just takes time, and you have to be aware of that. And it's we've made it very easy. We've built up our current culture of consumption and use and throughout has been built up in the last 50, 70 years since the Second World War. And so we're used to that, and we've made it extremely easy to just buy stuff very easily. We get it delivered to our home very easily. We don't even have to pay for it anymore. And then when you don't want it anymore, you have these, you just almost throw it out your window, and the waste companies come and collect it and pick it up for you.
It's getting too easy.
And the fee is just involved in your overall house bill, so you don't even see the cost of it. So the environmental cost, the economic cost is completely invisible to the consumers. And so, so
That's
there's
a good
other
point.
parts of the equation where you need, the circular, it sounds cliche, but there has to be cooperation in the whole value chain, because if you make it super easy for people to throw out their stuff, they will throw out their stuff. If you make it super easy for them to buy new stuff, they will buy new stuff, so, yeah.
Yeah, so we're really targeting those who have these extra resources to do a difference in another way than usual. Yeah. So it's not a family with 5 kids, small kids.
That you should start with, or again, it depends on the product and the specific. The important thing is to just get out there and get a feel for who the consumers are. What are they motivated by? What are the barriers? Furniture is so connected to our homes, our identity, our understanding of self, social status. So there's a lot of things, and people in this business know that, of course. But there's so many things you can play on, you can focus on, and then start small. Testing out these different schemes, whether it's really important when you talk behavior to focus on one particular thing at a time. Figure out, okay, do we want our consumers to return it? Do we want them to give it to
charity?
To charity? Do we want them to repair their stuff? And then zoom in on that thing, on one particular consumer segment, and then you just have to test off a bunch of
motivate them
ideas.
and make it easy, sort of, right?
Yeah, we don't like change. We like stuff that's easy and on the routine and on the habit, and that's what most of us just keep doing unless we try to intervene. Yeah.
I have to move on to Henrik then, because I'm sorry to say, but Henrik, for me, if I was a company, would I even start on this? Because it sounds really difficult and it takes a lot of resources and so on. So why should we do it? Why are you doing it? And actually, you are both having business-to-business consumer and business-to-end consumer, right?
Yeah.
Why did you even actually start doing this kind of circular work?
We started TAC 2.5 years ago. And it was really out of sort of a personal conviction that, these things were happening in the world and, what can you do? And everyone is an activist, so I thought, what could I do? And I think there's an element of, as you said, furniture. It's a delightful area to start with because it's a very considered purchase and something that people put their hearts into when they decide. So if you want to engage consumers and users in the transition, it's a good place to start, right? And initially I thought, well, maybe furniture is not such a bad area in terms of CO2, but then I actually figured out that it's not that good anyway. I mean, I think the stats are that about 12 million tons of furniture is being thrown out in Europe every year, and less than 10% is being recycled. It's just burnt. 12 million tons of stuff is being burnt. And if you just look in Denmark, the CO2 footprint of the consumption in Denmark from furniture is half of fashion. And everyone knows that fashion is the bad sinner, right? And furniture is half. It's half. It's not sort of a.
We're trying to hide us behind the fashion.
Yeah, it's quite substantial. But I think the main thing was actually, and it's not to be in contrast to what you were saying, but I think there's something about how we look at users of furniture, then rather than being consumers and we being commercial businesses trying to push stuff on people and and is only interested when they put the money down and then run away. I think the whole difference is that we want to engage the consumers and we actually have a lifelong relationship where it starts with them engaging in what we're trying to communicate and talk about. At one point, maybe they'll buy some of our furniture, but afterwards, because we are building a business that's as much about repairing and exchanging and shifting products between each other than actually about selling new products. So instead of thinking about as consumption, which I think is a really bad way of starting, because the motivation just push more stuff out, and I don't think that's the end goal. So I think that was the starting point. And then also saying, well, behind all these assumptions is, of course, the green transition, and making these choices are hard. And of course, everyone knows the stats about if you're smoking, everyone knows you're dying from smoking, but there's a lot of smokers out there, right? So that's, I guess, the classical example. But what if you actually made it really easy and like the obvious thing? It's not difficult to buy ecological milk or food and go out shopping anymore, right? So if we make it really simple, delightful products that you wanted to use, and actually afterwards you don't want to throw out, but you actually want to repair them and give them off to your kids afterwards, that would be a nice future, right? Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do.
And how are you doing?
Okay, I mean, we're not IKEA, but we're a small company, and in that sense, it's easy to become a gazellevirksomhed when you are starting from zero. Yeah. But we are growing well.
And how are so what do you think, or what, have you any research or any kind of knowledge about, are the consumers buying it because of all this repairing, easy to circulate, or is it just because it's nice products?
I think there's a very big difference in the consumers that buy. Some of our consumers, and I think the biggest part of it is buying just because they like the furniture and they think they look nice. And the fact that we have eco-labeled and CO2 calculation, all things, it's sort of a validation of the quality of it. I think that's how a lot of customers look at this. And then there's the other part that does it because they have a conviction about how to do things. And we hope that portion will increase over time. But even if they don't, I mean, we are on a mission of getting stuff out that is worthwhile, and then maybe they figure it out some years later.
And how are you communicating it? Because being a company, you don't have enough, not enough, but you don't have much money to do a lot of social media campaigns. And how do you get the message out?
It's a tremendous benefit if you have something at heart you want to communicate, and if you have something that is a little bigger than just earning money and paying your own salary. So that's what we are trying to come out with and talk about the story and what we're trying to do, and thankfully also even social media, where you pay a lot of money, when you actually have something that people engage in, you actually get traction on social media.
Yeah.
So we are very much on social media and talking about where we want to be and how we're thinking about this.
But are you doing any educational seminars, workshops?
We talked about this previously, and it was actually a very good idea to start something like that up. I mean, we see this big difference in sort of educational level for consumers, and I think you also mentioned that. There's some people that think, yes, we ought to do something, but they have no clue what CO2 is and what's the difference between buying a cheese and when you go out shopping and buying a chair and what the comparison is. And so it's very, very early, right? And then we have sort of top of the pyramid people that are very engaged and very knowledgeable about these things. And the important thing for us is to be really dedicated to doing the right thing, but not talking down to consumers, because people need to be able to join this journey whenever they are ready to do it, and then shouldn't be just seeing this mountain of stuff they need to educate themselves on. So.
But you
we're
have
trying
like
to-
on your webpage, like in Q&A, where all these, like, I would say maybe a little bit more nerds can get all these technical...
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of the benefits that we sell direct to customers, and we don't have a network of retailers and distributors that have to so you also know about this, because we actually just sell directly to customers, and that's why you can go into the website. And the way we structured it is that first you look at a nice picture, and hopefully you like the picture, but then you can keep on digging in. So there's a bit of information about the circular element of it. You can click in, and you can get all the way down to how we're thinking about offsetting, and what are the right types of offsetting, and what are the links to the Oxford principles, and there's a scientific article about this. So you can sort of keep on digging in, and not all people do that, but I think at least the idea that there's keeps on being knowledgeable available, and we can just talk about everything if you want to.
Okay, so you have somebody ready to give the information, but also
Yes, so lots of
chatting.
information on the website, and then of course we have good people sitting on
Chatting
on chat functions
yeah.
and email to answer questions.
Yeah, all right,
Yeah.
great. Yes, Anne, last but not least, IKEA. You are doing a lot of exciting trials and piloting circular economy stuff, take back section and so on. And of course, a lot of companies in this field say, okay, they look up to IKEA. What are they doing, and how are they doing? Is it really something that becoming a new business for them, and so on? But tell us a little bit about what is motivating IKEA, and what kind of experience do you have in this working with the end consumer in this transition?
You could say in IKEA we have a critical mass. And that is why we have, among other sustainable goals, a goal of inspiring and enabling more than 1 billion people around the world to actually live a more healthy and sustainable life at home. And in Denmark, which is the market I represent, it's not yet as important for the Danish consumers. It's not why you choose to buy furniture. It's range appeal and value proposition, and then sustainability can be an added benefit, actually. So what we have experienced is that we need to utilize the platforms we have in IKEA, meaning our stores and our digital universe, to actually try to get people with us in the sustainable transformation that we are onto. And it needs to be emotional, yes. We need to emphasize the emotional benefits, but it also needs to be very concrete, because we know from our research that all Danes acknowledge we have a climate crisis and that we need to change, but they don't know what to do, actually. So we need to support them in that. They're looking for us to support them in that. So that is our focus, at least now. We've tried out different things, as you say, also other types of communication. But what matters the most to us is actually our communication we have in our stores, and very close to the products that we sell.
And what do you do exactly in your stores in order to...
In the stores we have in the exhibition different sustainable homes, where we, within the context of the home, explain both tips and tricks to what you can do at home to live more sustainable, and also the different products we display, what is then the material used and so forth, so that we can educate the consumer a little bit. So that could be an example.
And because when you talk about this circular economy, you often talk about one of the areas where we actually could lift the amount of resources used is to extend the time span of the products.
Yes.
And of course, IKEA is just a bit like we call it in the fashion industry, fast fashion. You know, you have things, and you maybe have them for a couple of years. As Christopher said, it's almost too easy, you know, to buy them and throw them away. Someone will actually pick them up on your address Are you working on this area as well, you know, to extend the lifetime with repair or
Yes.
higher quality? What,
Yes.
what exactly are you aiming
Yes,
for?
that we are. And I think, yes, in Denmark we have a perception that maybe IKEA furniture, because of the low price, is not the best quality. And then you could go in and argue when you look at eBay, for instance, we have a lot of used furniture for sale in there, not us, but the consumers have. And then it's also about maybe our design heritage and so forth. What is attractive for the Danes? So that one I wanted to address first of all. Is it really bad quality or is it a perception? But then, of course, we also investigate how we can prolong the product life, how we can sell spare parts, for instance, and how we can support the customers in upcycling and prolong product lives. So in this autumn, we will circular hubs within our stores where you can over time get more and more tips and tricks to how to enrich the furniture you already have. And then we also play along with different, you could say, activities focusing on that. We had the Black Friday resale a few years ago. That was also very much about trying to disrupt the landscape out there in the context of Black Friday, and then pay attention to instead maybe doing something else, buying used or upcycling what you have. And we had last year the buyback service that we launched, which I must say is still small in Denmark, and that's also it relates to how convenient is it to actually go to IKEA and return your furniture. There we need to also improve to get more furniture and more volume in when it comes to the pre-loved part. It's not convenient yet, so that we can upscale. Yeah.
We will talk about the future in just a bit. Because you said something that in Denmark we're not ready yet, but I know that maybe some other markets. I know you are in the Danish IKEA,
yeah.
But of course you kind of know what's going on in the other market. What markets are much more mature in this circular transition, do you think?
No, actually not.
No.
I think we are quite ahead in Denmark, sorry to say, but we are, when it comes to sustainability, one of the most mature markets.
Okay,
At
so
least from
we
my
could be
perspective,
one of
yeah.
them. You are really targeting for piloting new
Yes,
kind of
yes,
stuff. Okay.
and that we have been also in Denmark,
Yeah.
in the IKEA world. We have been the first with some of the sustainable initiatives, for instance, the Black Friday resale.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. And the take-back system.
Yeah, no, that was worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was well. Okay. Good. Because now I want to see how much time we have. Some time to discuss with you. Well, this is kind of what's going on now, because we have just made a roadmap with a lot of researchers from all the universities in Denmark and design schools as to when can we expect us to be a totally circular society. And of course we're aiming for that, and of course Denmark being a small country, but as you said, we're quite high up on the mind of sustainability and circularity. But we of course would like to have visions and goals that we will become, or we have to, I guess, become a circular society, not in too far away future. What does it take? What does it take to come there? What do you think? And what are you looking in as to companies and you as researchers and trends experts? What do you think is going to be coming right now? What tendencies do you see into this area? Anything you want to share? Maybe Anja, or you start?
Yeah. I definitely think that we need a political shift, we need a political paradigm shift, and we need legislation to make the huge push that is needed. Because that is one of those things that has an effect, and what we can also just see from the maybe previous 5 years. We can see it on electric cars, for example. It's starting now to boom within the Danish community because of the taxes have been put down. So it's a motivator out there to make a kind of transition for that. So I really hope that we, from a political standpoint, do make some great initiatives and see the sustainable growth goals not just as goals, but a finish line we need to reach.
And when you talk about regulation, is there any particular area you would like to see getting more regulated?
Yeah, of course, anything that has to do with green living. So we need to also maybe not only put it also only on the businesses, but only also a little bit on the consumer. But we need to make it a common thing, that this is just how we live. This is just how the future is. It's not an added benefit in the future. It just needs to be how we do it. So very much the transition needs to look at, of course, production, material usage, enhance all the circularity that goes on into an everyday life, make it easier. Yeah.
Maybe also to get companies to be more transparent, to see what kind of, CO2 is on each product, or how could we get more information, get the customers to make it more easy? We have heard that it has to be easy, otherwise we won't get them along.
I'm not certain that we need more information, or we need to tackle more information coming from the companies. We already regulate, our companies to work in a certain way and pay the taxes that they need to. So it just needs to be the same thing as that. So I don't necessarily see that it should be a consumer choice. It should just be how we actually live and how our society is put together.
So standard.
So yeah, make it a green choice instead of an added benefit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure. But I'll get it all the way through. But I would just ask Christopher to come in, and then you, Bjørn, Henrik, just a moment. Yeah.
So I completely agree on the regulation and the political side, but from our point of view, the great challenge ahead and what has to be focused on is this. So we've been working with this since 2014, and since then we've seen such an increased awareness in everywhere in society, in debates and everything about sustainability and climate. And I think that we have to remember that too, that again, our culture and our behaviors and everything up till today has taken a very, very long time. So to expect this thing to happen fast is hard. But if we look at how quickly this agenda just went from here to here, at least on the awareness scale, I think that's very positive, and that's kind of the foundation. But now we then need to go from awareness and knowledge to action and change. And for this, back to what I said before, I think it's great that someone like IKEA takes a stand saying we have to help guide the consumers, because the consumers are not going to do it because they're busy picking up the kids, working, cooking dinner, doing all their everyday stuff. We are getting busy and busy in society. More and more people get stressed, that no one has the capacity to also start thinking consciously about all these choices. And the scientific behavioral research also showed that we are not rational choice agents most of the time, perhaps only 10% of the time. The rest of the time, we're just in the motions, working through it. So if companies, also regulation, and also the public in Denmark, which is so strong, the municipalities, don't go in and act as the agents of change that has to nudge and help and guide the consumers on this path, it won't happen. So that's the main challenge ahead, to bridge the motivation with the action, and that has to be guided by both private and public.
That's easy then for me as a consumer. I just have to wait until it gets regulated, and just wait till the companies are doing well and pushing the right products. So I don't have to do anything.
No, you will have to engage in the things that are then sort of
important to me. Yeah.
And you will be, because you see it more in the media. You will go to debates like this. We are already engaged much more in this than we used to be. But yeah, of course, the consumers have a saying, and everyone have to work on this. But I think on the grand perspective, we're talking transition of the masses here. We have to put the focus on the emphasis on helping and guiding from private and public part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Henrik?
So I think on the regulation side, that there definitely needs to be a move in the focus on this, and it doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, putting a CO2 tax on, where you actually back to other kinds of sort of behavioral, where you clearly can see what impact you have on the environment, I think makes tons of sense. And I really don't understand why it can be so difficult. Of course, there need to be ways of calculating it in the right way, and people can debate all these sort of technicalities. But that ought to be relatively easy. There ought to be relatively easy to put down regulation in terms of how you inform consumers, and how you make sure you don't deceive consumers, because this is a trend. It's also a fashion trend, so there's also bad companies out there who are just trying to ride the trend and certainly making sustainable collections where they just changed a bit of fabric here and there, and then they call it a sustainable collection. So I think a bit of structure
That's
around
both
this.
greenwashing and green hustling. Do you know what green hustling is?
But then I think the other thing that goes on in the debate at the moment is this sort of behavioral change. So last year, now everything has to be controlled by the government, which I really don't subscribe to, because it has to be both sides, right? I mean, we need to keep on acting responsibly as consumers. And really, I'm very hopeful, actually, because when you start to know basic stuff, it's hard not to change your behavior. Like when you go down for your grocery shopping, and you know what the cheese emits of CO2 compared to your broccoli or whatever. I mean, it's hard not to shift your behavior, because it's not very difficult, right? And so the same thing with furniture and other things. And so we need to keep on pushing for having good data available, companies being transparent about it, and then being hopeful that consumers can also make a change.
Maybe
So
we can make some kind of a list on people's door, how much CO2 is listed in your house. And then we can compete with that, because somehow it has to be visible, right? Because no, well, I think you said, Christopher, that our house is very much our safe place, and that's where we want to express who we are, what kind of values we are.
So I'm not saying the mass, of course it's a big change, and many people need to change it, but we just got to be hopeful that if we start acting, and we ourselves start to act in the right way, and we talk about it, and we as companies inform consumers about it, there's a logic that people will start to pay better. We got to believe in that, right? And so couple that with the regulation stuff that we talked about,
And what about if we meet here in 10 years' time? How do you see IKEA in 10 years' time?
Oh, I see IKEA as a totally different business, actually, in 10 years' time. We are constantly, I think, renewing ourselves, and also looking into our business model. And we will be different in 10 years, also when it comes to sustainability, and maybe the way we drive our business model. Who knows?
Repair workshops.
Let's see. Will we lease furniture? Will we, be a different marketplace? I don't know. But I think what I would like to highlight also when it comes to creating the change, also in Denmark, which is the market I represent, and also having, I guess, a lot of well-educated people sitting here listening in. I think what we need is also to be aware of the way we talk about it in Denmark, talk about sustainability and what is needed. I often experience that the dialogue is very emotional and also becomes a little bit judgmental. Now, you talked about greenwashing before, and I think we need to be aware of not closing the dialogue actually and judging each other, because then the dialogue will stop and we will not create change. So if I could have a prayer, it's actually to open up your curiosity and go into dialogue, also with brands or retailers that you maybe in your perception is not really making an effort. Maybe they are, maybe you just don't know. So I think we need that to actually create a change for real. And I'm also representing communication, of course. So that is my contribution.
But so what you're actually saying, just to sum up, is go into a dialogue, but also be honest about what you can do right now and what you're trying to do. Yeah. So we're talking about transparency, more transparency. Because that's why I just mentioned green hustling, because now we know many of the big platforms, they have actually got quite hammered by, this sustainability is too wide, it's not easy for no one to understand what you mean with the sustainability. So, you have to change that. So many companies which we talk to, they say, well, we do a lot, but we don't want to communicate it because there's something we know that we could do better.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean with green hustling, because
Yeah.
then we go over in the other end of the street.
Then we don't talk about it.
Yeah, that we
And then
don't
we
talk
create
about it,
no
and it
change.
will become our little secret in our company. But that's not good either. So what kind of instrument will you be using? You know, is it seminars, discussion forum, or just like Q&As, as TACT is doing, chat function? How should we work with this transparency?
I think also representing IKEA, we have a lot of different opportunities actually, of course, both within marketing and communication and meeting the customers on the sales floor every day. So I think we are able to actually make a quite big difference there, and that is also what we are aiming for. And then it depends, I think, because we are also different as companies, have different starting points. For us, it's a transformation. For TACT, it has been in the DNA. It was the starting point, as I heard you. So we are different. So I will not be able to, I think, give advice to anyone. And also because we are, as a big global company, of course, in a different place when it comes to communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's of course two different type. You know, one is kind of born circular, and you're trying to
Yes,
change around.
Yes.
But then also we hear a lot from the small companies that we need the big companies to move forward, because you're the
Yes.
one who can kind of
Yes,
show
of
the way.
course.
So it's a definitely collaboration, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. My last question, I think we have a couple of minutes left, is if you can elaborate, all of you. We talk about getting the consumer involved. I follow one American woman, and she is trying to live totally circular. And she had, by the end of the year, all her trash was in a little glass jar. But it was more than full time. And she is, of course, communicating how she's trying to buy things without packaging, and the things has to be like biodegradable and all these kind of things. Is that what we're aiming for? Like no trash, we have to circle everything around. Is that where we should be going? And how do we motivate? And we have talked about regulation, but what do you think? Is that the way forward?
I would answer that question, but I would also say that I very much agree that we need to acknowledge also what we've already done and what is being done right now. I think that's really, really important in this dialogue, because we don't need to necessarily only have patience. We also need to know that we are on the path and continue that path. And just because I say legislation is not the only thing to do, it's a complex system. So just because I say that one thing, it's not that I only believe that that's the only one thing to do. It's super complex. But regarding your question, it's really interesting to see how we are addressing this whole sustainability transition by handling the waste that we are actually continuing to make. Because for me, the future of design should simply not create waste. It should simply not do any impact, or it should do positive impact. So we're thinking of the regenerative line of work. That is where we can then do a real good circular consumption, because we can actually make and take back. And in my research for new trends, of course, I stumble upon many objects and many designers that are really working there. And we just need to continue to support that, maybe also from legislative point of view, political point of view, to get these projects out of the labs and to make them possible to be used in IKEA or for TACT, so that it becomes available, and that we think design as not having an impact, not creating waste, and not just only handling our waste. So that's where I see that is what we should do in the future.
Okay. Do you have any input, Christopher?
I think again we're unfortunately never gonna get everyone to live that way, where they can have their waste in a jar. With 7 billion people and more coming, so I think the ideal here is that we have to design it in a way where there is no waste, but we can't. It just happens as part of the way that we consume products, and we repair them and take care of them and return them back into some kind of system. So that's on the. We need to get to somewhere where there is no waste or only very little waste, but in a different way than the extreme version that she had there.
Okay. It's also a full-time job, so.
Yeah, exactly. And the on the last thing on how to, you definitely influencers are really strong in this sense. We are social people. We want to be part of the herd. At the end of the day, our brain and our system is 100,000 years old. So as much as you can do to communicate to some kind of community, as much as you can show things in a personalized way, personalized stories, I think that's really the way forward to get people engaged. This is much more motivating than facts and logic and even CO2 numbers and these things. It's back to sort of basic human social interaction.
Yeah. Great, good idea.
Cool. So you asked about the future 10 years from now, what that would look like? Was that the question?
Should we design for no waste in the future?
Okay, yeah.
Do you think that's possible?
Well, obviously, one of the answers is that waste should be not looked at waste, but just as a resource.
Yes,
right? Boom,
good.
done. But of course, it lies in the word of circularity is that once you've done with it, it's not something that is waste, but something for resource for something else. So I think, I don't know whether it's going to be 10 years from now, but I think we're going to move to places where the supply chains are much more integrated and much more narrow. In sort of geographically.
Yeah.
So
Local.
It used to be that you produced stuff all around the world and shop them around. The problem is that the cost of that is not really reflective of the impact it does to the world.
And you can't react to the consumer's demand right away now.
So again, back to the CO2, the tax. So there's a little bit of impact. But I think for that reason, it will start to be more narrow, so you actually harvest the resources much closer to yourself, and you're able to give it back again much closer to yourself, and thereby allow people to exchange stuff and not throw it out in the way. So I think that will actually be quite a massive change of the way our productions and setups works and how we buy stuff and reuse stuff.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Good. What about, I can start up soon a local company because I will be a local supplier to IKEA. You won't import stuff from Indonesia and China anymore, do you think?
Actually, we do not import that much from China and Indonesia, but since a lot of our furniture is actually made out of wood, which comes from different areas of the world.
Sure.
But nevertheless, I think to me, even though it starts with the furniture, I don't believe it stops there. Also, as we have seen now during COVID, that consumer behavior has changed, and now it's very much also about the online business. So I think going forward, we also need to figure out what is actually then to be done, not when you have necessarily stopped buying your furniture, but also how do we deliver and so forth in a way that in the end will not come on the expense of the planet. So I think, I agree. We need to broaden the perspective and look at it from a holistic perspective.
Could you, would it be possible for you or interesting for you to track your products so you can actually see, how long has it been used, what is going on after use, and, so in order to get information, get data into how to maybe more rely on how to circulate more in the future. But maybe you have this insight, I don't know. Yeah.
We have a lot of insights, actually. In that way, we're quite lucky and constantly work on the development part.
Yeah.
But of course, it is, and also on the changing consumer behavior, to be able to embrace that.
So the big change you've seen in COVID in the consumer behavior is moving more yourselves to online. Is there any other kind of things you want to share? Have you any other consumer behavior change during COVID besides online shopping more online?
You mean in general? Or?
No, just COVID-19. Is there any other things? So you have seen any other changes? Has it kind of motivated? We saw at least in the beginning of this COVID that the consumer will start think more sustainable and so on. They became more like green thinking and do we really need this more,
I think in COVID perspective, and that we can also bring with us, is that during COVID, especially in the first lockdown situation in Denmark, people actually stopped caring that much about the planet and cared about themselves and whether they wanted to, or were about to survive. And I think, that's maybe natural for us as human beings, that when we get under pressure, then it becomes very close. And then luckily now we see that we have broadened our perspectives again. And now we can take in more dilemmas or crises to solve. So that is a learning for us during COVID. And the role of the home changed. Of course, to
more
reflect that. We tried to utilize that people were more at home in the beginning, to maybe also try to nudge them to change their habits at home, to become more sustainable. I don't think we succeeded that much, but because the focus was, to be honest, more or less on how can I create a great work environment in my home. So it was all about working at home, and not so much about cooking with your kids in a sustainable way. No.
Okay, we have to still work on that then.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the panel. Great discussion, and thank you so much for your insight. Thank you very much. Yeah. And the panelists have promised me they will be standing, be here a little bit after the session. So if you have any questions directly with them, and also again a little commercial, please go and see the exhibition afterwards. 47 circular brands is waiting out there to see you. Thank you for coming.